And a fantastic Friday to you all out there in My Racehorse land. Nick Hines, the Sarge, the host of My Racehorse Live. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here for yet another edition of My Racehorse Live. An exciting show today, indeed action-packed, not to mention the fact that we've got a tremendous weekend full of competitive runners on the racetrack in the afternoons, and it just seems as if through the ebbs and flows of the game, not so many runners, a ton of runners, and I think this weekend will be the best of what 2021 has yet to offer. We will not only discuss our runners, we're going to welcome in a special guest, and proud to call him a friend of, it's been over 25 years, Dr. Jeffrey Berk, and have known Dr. Berk for quite some time, along with his brother, Andrew, who had worked as a practicing veterinarian here in Southern California for a number of years, and he will kind of apprise us on the update and the process in regards to Moonlight d'Oro, who unfortunately was diagnosed with a knee injury, and he'll delve into the specifics of that and the diagnosis, the prognosis, essentially going forward. On that note, let's welcome in our team, operations manager Joe Mishak, and of course the all things social hostess with the mostest, Hannah Bloom. And, of course, the racing manager here in the Golden State of California, the Golden Boy, Joe Moran. Good day, team.
Hello.
Good day, everybody.
Happy Friday. It's great to see you all. You look refreshed, and I think these smiles are just indicative of, I think when we look at the clock striking midnight Sunday, hopefully it will be full of winners, and Joe Mishak will be kind of ordering out those win pictures to all of the share partner and the shareholders out there. It should be a fun one. We're going to get into that. And if you guys just kind of stand pat where you are, we're going to bring you back in, as we're also going to focus on Hannah and her spotlight horse of the week and talk about, you know, the process with horses and rehabilitation and horses in a treadmill. Should be a fun one. But I want to go ahead and bring in that special guest that I had mentioned, and that would be Dr. Jeffrey Berk. And Dr. Berk, again, your resume goes long and deep, and of course intricate, and obviously our relationship has gone for a number of years. You as a VMD and the chair of the AAEP Racing Committee, your resume speaks for itself. Good to see you today, sir.
It's great to see you too, Nick. You're right. We've we've done a lot of good work together over the years, and so I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today.
Yeah, very fortunate that our paths have crossed, and as you have joined us here on My Racehorse Live. An unfortunate situation came up with the young, dynamic filly at Moonlight d'Oro coming off of a graded stakes victory in the Las Virgenes, and with the thousands of shareholders and the partners, and of course the My Racehorse team, we were devastated in knowing that we got ourselves a setback situation. But as I've always looked at it, with this sport being 365 days a year, you look as a setback often as a set up. So first and foremost, explain your role as a My Racehorse resident veterinarian and how you work with the My Racehorse team to advocate for stable runners. Sure,
Nick. I actually have several roles, one which you know very well because you and I have worked together at the sales, and that's being a part of the selection process of the horses that MyRacehorse.com is purchasing. And it's for the people who are unfamiliar with that process, I'll just run through it quickly. But basically, for the times that you and I have been working together, you know that your responsibility is to look at all the horses on the sales grounds that you might be interested in based upon your needs, based upon pedigree considerations and all of that. And then at the end of that, you will typically present me with your short list. It's what we call a short list, and it's basically those horses that you're interested in pursuing. And my job, I take over from that point to assess those horses in terms of their suitability for the intended purpose. And of course, in this instance, the intended purpose would be for racing. And so I basically am doing three things for you. I examine the horse, do a good thorough physical examination, and it includes all the basics and just making sure that there's nothing obvious that would preclude the horse from being a candidate for racing. I also look at their throat function, and that can be done one of two ways now, as we've done it for many years. I have a piece of equipment called an endoscope, and I introduce it into the horse's nostril, thread it up their airway, and to look at their larynx, and just to make sure that it's functioning properly and that there are no abnormalities. Within recent years, we have the option also of having a video done of the throat by a veterinarian of the consignor's choice, and that video can be lodged in the repository, which is the information center, and so it can be viewed that way as well. If the video is adequate and recent, I'll use it. And then the third thing is reviewing a full set of x-rays of these horses, their limbs, their knees, front ankles, hind ankles, hocks, and stifles. And so that's pretty standard stuff. That's what we do. So if you give me a list of 5 horses you're interested in, as you know, I will do that work, and then I'll call you back and we'll discuss them. It's factual information. However, the part that I do is just pieces of a puzzle. So I'm going to give you the information. We're going to discuss the relative risk, and that's where my job is more of a portfolio manager than anything else. I'm assessing risk and trying to present you with it, and also I need to know my clients, so I need to know what their risk level is. And so we try to match the risk that's presented in the horse with your risk tolerance, and I'll make a recommendation, or perhaps just say this is a low risk item, or this is medium risk or high risk, and then you as the agent will take that information and make a final decision. But there's a lot of communication that goes on there. So that's part of what I do for MyRacehorse.com. I think an equally important part is what we're going to discuss today, which is MyRacehorse.com has a number of horses in training and racing at various racetracks around America. And everybody's doing their job. The trainer is training the horse. The trainer hires their own veterinarian to do veterinary work on these horses. But my job is to kind of take a bird's eye view of the whole thing, of the horse's entire management, which includes the veterinary part of it, but it also includes looking at the horse's past performance. You know, there are certain things that I think that we have talked about as an organization that are important, such as maintaining the health of these horses and their soundness over a long period of time. It's very easy, if someone's not paying attention, for a horse to be over-raced, and therefore hard for that horse to get back to where it was. And so, for example, if I am presented with not just the veterinary records on a horse, but also the past performance, and I see that the horse has been racing for over a year, and maybe even perhaps the performance is tailing off, we need to have the discussion about how this horse is being managed, and perhaps maybe recommend some diagnostics, perhaps entertain the idea that the horse may need a little bit of time off to freshen up for a new campaign. And I mean, I think that's how you get the most out of your horses and you treat them the best, is by looking at it that way. So I'm basically, my job as the veterinarian for MyRacehorse.com in that instance is to be helping you to identify whether horses are functioning maximally or whether we might need to take a different approach. And I'm very careful when I do that to not make the trainers or their veterinarians feel like we're being intrusive. This is something that is the responsibility of the My Racehorse group as owners to oversee and make these decisions on these horses. So that's essentially
a rather intricate process, you know, as we've discussed before. All right, so now that you've essentially introduced us into that process, so to speak, because this process can start at a very young age with the weanlings, the yearlings, the 2-year-olds in training, private purchases, for example, even at the level of broodmares. So with that introduction in itself, as I prefaced the conversation with Moonlight d'Oro, coming off a victory on February 6th, had gone back-to-back in victories, winning the Grade 3 Las Virgenes, the daughter of Medaglia d'Oro, out of the mare Venetian Sonata in a partnership with Spendthrift Farm. There was discovery made in reference to a knee injury. So could you explain the injury to us and how common in racing is this type of injury? And with that diagnosis via radiograph, a nuclear scintigraphy, as we were to proceed forward, what would be your prognosis in this particular case?
Sure. Well, first of all, let me explain how this whole thing evolved. Obviously, it was a brilliant victory for the filly, and we're very happy about that. It was discovered after the race by the trainer, Mr. Mandela, and his veterinarian, Dr. Jeff Blea, that she came up lame after the race in her right forelimb. And so apparently was carrying a little bit of heat over the knee. And radiographs were taken at that time to take a look at the knee, and it was found that she, in fact, did have a very small chip fracture in the off the bottom of what we call the radial carpal bone. Interestingly, a horse's knee, the bones in the horse's knee are essentially identical to the horses found in the human wrist. Those are your carpal bones, and so it was one of those bones in a very typical location. That has a small fragment there, and so that's a pretty straightforward situation. It does happen. It's caused by loading of the forces when the horse's limb is in extension. It doesn't happen lots, but it's not an infrequent or unusual finding, cause of lameness also. So it's basically a kind of a typical racetrack injury that we do see from time to time. I think there was a movie, maybe it was The Godfather, that said Don Corleone likes to get bad news fast. And so I want to give you a piece of good news before we get too far into this. The good news is it's all going to be fine. But the bad news was obviously that she's injured and is going to be on the shelf. So you'd say, so how do we proceed from there? Well, that's a pretty straightforward one. It requires surgery. The filly was scheduled for surgery and placed on anti-inflammatories, which is a normal procedure just to make her more comfortable. It was discovered that she was still lame a few days later, which is a little bit unusual for a knee chip. And so when you think about the procedure of what happens when we do surgery, obviously these horses have to be laid down under general anesthesia. There was some concern expressed, and justifiable concern, that since she was still lame, that the knee chip, although obviously needing to come out, might not have been the sole cause of her lameness. And so a bone scan was performed just to rule out anything up higher in the limb, like a humeral or scapular stress fracture, that would, because that if we found something like that, you would not want to lay the horse down, because getting up out of anesthesia, they could make that fracture worse. So fortunately, there was nothing found anywhere else. We did, as a matter of routine, want to have the other knee radiographed, which we did, and it's clean, and in essence, no findings there. And so what we have is a small chip in the lower joint of the right knee. The actual surgery time is very short. There's a very good surgeon doing it. A friend of mine, Dr. Wayne McElwraith, will be doing the surgery. I've actually spoken to Dr. McElwraith on the phone already about it, and there wasn't a lot to talk about here because it's a very straightforward procedure. It will take him certainly less than half an hour to do the surgery, and maybe much less than that. It's a very straightforward procedure. The comfort level of the horse will be good after surgery. She won't know that there's anything there. So there shouldn't be any discomfort after surgery. Let's see, what else can I tell you about this? The prognosis for this type of finding, this type of surgery post-surgically, is excellent for return to racing. I will say, though, that having said that, I think that Dr. McElwraith, the surgeon, always is in the best position to give the most accurate diagnosis, because that person is the one sticking the arthroscope in the joint and not only cleaning up the chip, but any surrounding cartilage that's been damaged. And so they can give the best idea of the prognosis based upon what they see when they're in surgery. This is a small chip, and I would expect it to be an uneventful surgery with an excellent prognosis, but I will speak with Dr. McElwraith after the surgery. I believe that she is scheduled on Saturday for surgery. So as far as the post-surgical recovery, it also is pretty uneventful. Typically, these horses get 60 to 90 days. And it is an interesting thing because when a horse gets a chip, of course, nobody likes that. It's not a good thing. But what happens to some of these horses inadvertently, which is a good thing, is when they get the surgery, they get some time. And, you know, some of these horses, believe it or not, even at the age of 3, are still growing and maturing. And it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. There's been more than one horse that's had a chip fracture at an early age that's come back to become an excellent and top grade 1 earner later on. So I don't really expect, I mean, at this point, there's really no negative news at all except for a temporary setback. Nick, did you have other questions? Anything that I haven't covered here?
I think you did a tremendous job, but, you know, covering all bases. And, you know, that's the whole dynamic with, say, for example, in this case, you know, whether or not you're a sole proprietorship or you're a general partnership, but in this particular case of Moonlight d'Oro, the number of partners that are involved, you get so many questions and ideas. And for those that don't know the industry, you know, say, for example, the term lame. I believe there's a question that came up here from Logan. It says, what does the term lame indicate to you when you say a horse is lame?
Well, you know, that's based upon a visual inspection most of the time. And it's, you know, of course, when lame versus sound, when you see a horse that is sound or lameness free, you're seeing a horse that's moving at the walk and the trot free and easy with a very symmetric movement in all limbs. When we talk about a horse being lame, typically it's manifested as an asymmetric gait, and a lot of times, especially in the front, if it's a front limb lameness, you'll see a head bob, and you'd say, well, why would you see the head going up and down? Well, because think about how we compensate if we've hurt one of our legs. You change the way that you move, and in this case, the horse will bear more weight when they're on the sound limb, which means that their head goes down. And then when they bearing weight on the lame limb, their head comes up to try to keep the weight off of it. So that's one way of assessing a lameness. And, you know, of course, there's a certain amount of experience here. So, you know, that plays into it as well.
I think that the term lame, obviously, when it pertains to virtually, there are a number of different, I mean, you could have a lame duck president, so to speak. We think lame, but when it comes to physical terms, like you'd said, I think the symmetry that you're looking for when you're diagnostically going over a racehorse, and that's one thing I can appreciate for all of the trainers that are employed by MyRacehorse.com is the fact that the idea of, hey, looking at these horses, evaluating them on a daily basis. Say, for example, in the Richard Mandela case, I mean, we've got a Hall of Fame trainer, his assistant and son, Gary. You know, they go over these horses countless times, whether it be with hoof testers, flexing of the joints. It's not only a situation where you have the house vet, so to speak, but, you know, I kind of look to you, and as we've had this conversation, Joe Mishak, and I know that you've spoken as well to our California racing manager, Joe Moran, at the sales, but, you know, having you as a quote unquote kind of a team physician is next level for me personally. I mean, knowing your experience, you know, just based on levels of success that I've had personally at the sales, but in particular from a learning perspective, because the one thing I can tell you, Dr. Berk, that it's always a learning experience with you. And I want to tell you, we greatly appreciate on behalf of all of us at MyRacehorse, you know, the tireless effort and your hard work does not go unnoticed. And we look forward to having you on future shows. And hopefully in the future, maybe we can even post up some radiographs and actually you can maybe do a little, you know, a pinpoint or say, for example, some sort of a pro forma to show us exactly where the chips have been removed or whether it be a screw inserted, kind of the process if indeed down the road these things were to occur. But in Moonlight d'Oro's case, safe to say, a pretty common injury in the game, and prognosis in a perfect world of imperfection would be excellent in your mind.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, you know, one of the great advantages that we have here is that we're dealing with some very high quality trainers and their veterinarians. And I think the opportunity to have good communication with them is what's going to really give us success. I think at the end of the day, it's a kind of a process where we're gathering information. That's part of my job. Present it to you all, and then make a decision based upon really good information. So, yeah, be happy to in the future as we go forth. And as you said, there's going to be these animals are athletes, and they are elite athletes. And just like all elite athletes, they're subject to injury at times. And this is going to have a happy ending, this one, and many of them do, and a few of them don't. But maybe in another time we can talk about the ones that go on to a second career, because I think that would be very much in the forefront of many of your clients' minds, as far as what happens to a horse when it inevitably does stop racing, whether it's due to an injury or some of them due to lack of talent, or for a variety of reasons. So yeah, we've got plenty to talk about, that's for sure.
All right, Doc. Well, I guess we'll look forward to seeing you next up, the March OBS and training sale. Look forward to seeing you personally, along with Joe Mishak, Joe Moran, and look forward to having you on the show sometime in the very near future. And we'll be providing those updates on Moonlight Doro post-operative, which of course will be provided by Dr. Wayne McElraith. You'll have an opportunity to kind of give your 2 cents on that. But thank you for your time coming on with My Racehorse Live today.
Well, thanks a lot, Nick. It's always a pleasure, and we'll see you soon.
All right, Dr. Berk, ladies and gentlemen, we could go on and on. He certainly is not only a professional, but a gentleman as a person. I'm excited. I mean, again, set back, set up. And I think that you have to kind of wire your minds in that thought process. And, before you know it, 6-7 months down the line, we'll be back in action. So thank you, Dr. Berk. Speaking of action, let's bring back in Joe Mishak, Joe Moran. Gentlemen, it starts today, and we're looking forward to what potentially could be a great weekend for the My Racehorse runners. And, I have to say that Dr. Berk was quite informative of Joe Mishak, and I know that you've been on the forefront with communicating with him.
Yeah, absolute pleasure to work with Dr. Berk. Always informative, always working with him to explain things. He does such a great job keeping it to the individual level, to the novice level, and it's obviously what we want to share with everybody. And just, we talk about top players in the industry. We have top trainers. We got the Bob Baffords of the world. We got the Todd Fletchers of the world. I think we got the best vet in the world doing our work. So it's just been an absolute pleasure to work with Dr. Berk, and hope for many years to come.
Joey McReynolds says, hi, Joe and Joe. So Joey's probably most interested in how we're going to try and make some money, and it will begin at 5:16 Eastern today. Daddy's Joy has been entered up at Gulfstream Park, and it's an allowance, optional. She's obviously in for the allowance. She's been dispatched at 7:05 on the morning line. I know both of you have had an opportunity to kind of delve into the field. It's 5/8, scaling back. Joe Mishak, what's your take on this particular race?
I think, we're in a situation with a couple of our horses, almost it's a very odd setup. So obviously with Daddy's Joy and Storm Shooter, it's been a couple races where we've been trying to get into, and they've been pushed back. In this case, for Daddy's Joy, Sappy was, trying to keep it the 2-turn distance. But I think Daddy's Joy is more than capable, and we had to settle here for a 5 furlong sprint. But we know when she broke her maiden, she was very capable of going a short ground. I think she had a great setup being on the outside. I think the lead's there for her if she wants it, or if she wants to sit off the flank of the 5 horse that's there. I think she's, in a great spot. I'm just, race can't get here soon enough. I think all of our horses this weekend are all in that tactical speed mode, right? So anytime you're loaded with speed and you see a good setup, your eyes just kind of, your mouth starts to water a little bit, right? So that's kind of how I'm looking at these races, in particular, Daddy's Joy.
Well, it's crazy to think, and Joe Moran's going to bring in here in a moment, but when you consider the My Racehorse effect, we've obviously, we're horse players, and My Racehorse, they're not afraid to take their hard-earned $2 to the window. And when you consider Daddy's Joy, who will kick off in race 9 tonight, this evening at Gulfstream, and you look ahead to Sunday, February 21st, race 2, you've got Storm Shooter coming off of a nice stakes runner-up effort. Well, it's a 5-horse field. He's been dispatched at 6-5. So Joe Moran, when you look at that, and obviously we're going to go into Naismith debuting on Sunday, which is so exciting to have that son of Medaglia d'Oro essentially taking that baton from Moonlight and saying, all right, I'll take your Medaglia d'Oro to that next step. But Joe Moran, when you look at Storm Shooter on Sunday, Mishak touched on the idea that, we've had a situation where these races have been pushed back. And I know as a former trainer, it's almost a juggling act to keep these horses sharp and on their toes. It's not as if you can just snap the fingers or flip the light on. Hey, we're ready to go. So tell me, looking at Storm Shooter for Sunday, race 2, post time 1:50 Eastern, 10:50 Pacific, what's it going to take for him to get through that first condition, chasing a nice purse of $72,000?
Yeah, well, I think the big advantage for him versus Daddy's Joy in that training aspect of, the race is not going is, in essence, Storm Shooter really, it's only been about just over 30 days now, I believe, since his last race. So at least to Todd Pletcher's advantage is he hasn't had to work him too many times in between those races where Safi's had to put a series of drills under her, prepping to go a mile. Now we're going 5/8. So for Storm Shooter, he's coming off a sharp effort. He had that speed back up with a clean break last time out. We get a good post in a short field. So I think it's going to be pretty straightforward. On numbers, he's the horse. When you're making money, I hate to say it this way, but I always say sometimes the best bet in racing is against MyRacehorse because that early money comes in so much. But for him, to me, it's his race to lose. And I think on paper, he's the horse to beat in there.
All right, Joe Mishak, when you look at Storm Shooter, for me, once again, I don't like being the guy that's going to be 6-5, but frankly, he's likely to be in a neighborhood of 2-5. So is this a situation where you tell Dylan Davis, hey, look, hang on, keep him out of trouble, and let's just go win a race? Or what's your take on the race? And I know that we're going to dig a bit more into Naismith's lineup, but when you look at Storm Shooter's race Sunday, who's the horse to beat, and what type of trip is it going to take him to win?
Well, of course, we're the horse to beat, and I'm saying it, and I mean it. But I think he drew perfectly. He's on the outside. The one horse on the inside is the other horse with speed in the race. So I just see us breaking and going like we've done in recent races. He's going to send and play come and get me. And I just think based on his numbers, it's the right thing to do, the right strategy to do. And I think, going back to, here's my ticket here, just, 4 over the 2 who's, coming out of certain stakes races, Market Alert. But he took a little time off after his Market Alert, take a little time off after the December race. Not sure that he's fully cranked yet. So then we're just going with it. The rest of the horses coming in third to spread out. So not a huge money-making race, but I kind of felt like just with like Moonlight d'Oro, it was pretty clear cut in my mind. And let's see. It's kind of up to you to how much money you want to put on the ticket. So I think with Shooter as well, it's I know some of the shareholders frustrations about races getting kicked back, but it's it's always the patience game, right? We have a plan. Todd Pletcher has a plan. The horse came off a career best race last time. Sometimes it's your benefit to wait a little bit longer when a horse has a career top. Sometimes they bounce if you come back too soon. And the distance suits him optimally. I know some shareholders are, why didn't we run in the 1 mile gander? Well, this stage of the game is it's not really in his best wheelhouse right now to get to that distance. It might not ever be. Obviously, we want to take advantage of where he's at right now in his fitness, where Todd and his team feel the horse belongs, and obviously take advantage of those conditions. And we'll come back, and if he continues to progress, then we have a lot of stakes to look forward to the rest of the year.
All right, Joe Moran, what are your thoughts on this particular race from a gambling horse playing perspective? You went to the trifecta box. I'm a little worried about that.
Well, why? Can I? You're just worried about the box for not keying him?
I'm all about the key. But tell me.
I'm with you. I mean, obviously, I'm all in on him, but I think from a money-making perspective, I maybe could have played it a few more times, but I think this covers yourself. And I think as Joe Mishak touched on, Market Alert, I think he's going to be a key factor in this race. Looking to the outside, Halpert, it's a 5-horse field, so I don't think you're going to get much value regardless in this race. But he's a horse, when you look at buyers, he's going to have to take a major step up. but I thought this horse ran really good when he broke his maiden, came back, stumbled really bad against us last time in the Rego Park. So I think that's a horse that's sitting on an improvement. He's drew the rail the past 2 times. He gets an outside post now. So I'm expecting that horse to make an improvement. I still truly believe we're the horse to beat, but in a 5-horse field, it is a rider's race. You never know what can happen. So I think I'm just covering myself here with the $5 trifecta box.
That's good. I like the fact that you divert a little bit of pressure in the other direction. No pressure going in. For me, I went ahead and keyed Storm Shooter. I feel like you, Joe Moran, that the 5 is kind of an interesting price play. When you get a concise field like this and there are only 5 horses, and there's a horse at 12-1 with a big excuse out of the Rego Park last out. If you remember the race flow of the Rego Park, Storm Shooter was in a battle. It was kind of a merry-go-round 1, 2, 3 race. Now, granted, the splits were quick. The top 3 finishers earned that right. But I think at the end of the day, the 5 is an interesting price horse. So I'm going to go heavy on the exactas. I'm definitely going to use Market Alert underneath. I think he's the horse to beat. So for me, it's a $20 exacta Storm Shooter over Market Alert 2 and the 5 in this case being Halpert. All right. Well, that is going to be earlier in the day come Sunday, February 21st, and post time 1:50, race 2, 10:50 out here on the left coast. But moving further along that day at Santa Anita, this is a race in debut that I have been anticipating. I know so many of you have also out there in my racehorse land, the debut of Naismith. And first, I want to go to Joe Mishak. And this is a horse that you in particular came up with that name, which I absolutely love it, being a hoops guy myself, out of the damn inventive. Plenty of reasons to have faith in the pedigree. Race 5, Sunday, post time 2:42 Pacific. That's 5:42 for you Easterners. Mishak, Naismith, thoughts?
Here we go, right? You absolutely alluded to the picking up the Medaglia d'Oro baton, so to speak, and we have a horse here that anytime, we look at Medaglia d'Oros and, we're looking to buy one or assess them, we know that they bring a lot of versatility, right? Whether it's, performance on the dirt or on the turf surface. This is a horse that obviously has been working really, really well over the dirt surface. We got on first time to the turf, and I'll let you guys kind of talk into some of the aspects. I think long-term, I think he'll do well on the turf, as many do. But, obviously this looks like a horse that should set up well for a nice dirt career as well. So also just a good spot in the condition book, I think. This time of year, you run into certain horses. We all know that this time of year, Bob Baffert's barn is loaded with something. He's trying to get somebody going. So, take a little spot somewhere else where you might get a little softer spot and see if he can pop first time out. I think he's been training well. Not sure if it's, the first time out of the gate winning, but I think he's going to run a big race.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. And I know that Joe Moran out there, as well as myself, for a number of those workouts. Joe Moran, let's kind of get into the handicapping aspect of this particular race. And obviously, of the 3 races that we see, Naismith's 5-1 in the morning line. Whether we'll get that or not remains to be seen. But 5-1 versus 6-5, 7-5 today with Daddy's Joy. What would be your approach from a handicapping perspective? And you can enlighten us just a little bit on his training and what you think.
Yeah, well, he's a horse that I think is ready to go. Trainer Richard Mandel has been very pleased with him. He's got a great foundation under him. So fitness-wise, I think he's going to be ready to go, handle that 3/4 on the turf starting on Sunday. I touched on it, I believe it was a week or so ago, about trainer Richard Mandela's first-time stats on the turf versus the dirt, where I believe he's hitting just over 20% first time on the turf and on the dirt. It's a major difference. I believe it was under 5% first time, but we've talked about Richard Mandela as a trainer that he puts such a foundation in these horses, he develops them. But that turf course is such a great way to give them that initial foundation, give them experience, and horses are able to handle it a lot more. The Santa Anita track is a demanding surface, so for a younger horse getting their debut, the turf course is a great way to get that first race under their belt. So speaking about his training, he's been sharp in the mornings. He's had plenty of experience at the gate, so I believe he's going to break sharp. And I don't think we're going to have any worries about him being involved early in the race. The big key is going to be if he can control that speed we got leading rider Flavian Pratt, so we couldn't have got anyone better in the irons for him. And then the rest will just come down to race day. I always say you never know until that gate opens. That's truly when you know what you got, no matter how good they're working in the morning. Until that gate opens, that's when you know what you got.
Yeah, I would agree. It's much like not quite like going on a blind date, so to speak, but you kind of gotten to know someone via telephonically or through text messaging or even on a Zoom chat. But until you actually go meet them personally, we're going to find out when Naismith steps into the paddock come Sunday. I'm ultra excited, uber excited about that. And also, Joe, I wanted to mention best of luck with Edge Racing. And yes, this time I know that you're going to be hitting the Red Eye tonight. Another horse that perhaps we can make a few bucks on. So Kelly Breen training, yes, this time coming off of I thought a better than look fourth place effort last out. So, all right, well, I'm going to definitely look at your exacta, but for me, I'm going to go trifecta route here. And quickly, just touching on the ticket, I think the experience of the 8 Eagle Chief is going to go a long way. Although this horse comes in 0 for 3, I'm including him in the mix. In our pre-production meeting, Joe Mishak touched on Circumvent. Dave Hoffman certainly could be a trainer who's very sneaky at times the first-time starter. Horse might appreciate further, but I keyed the 4 over the 2, 7, 8. Definitely going to use Beyond Brilliant, Twirling Candy, gaudy first out stats. And I think John Sheriff should have this one ready to launch on debut. So a $1 trifecta, cost of 18, King Naismith over the 2, 7, 8, and know it. I'm by no means being a homer here. I am confident, despite the fact that we all know he will likely appreciate a race in tow, and maybe turf, quote unquote, won't be his calling. I think he's good enough to overcome despite that, and I think it's a good thing. It's a nice kind of a soft launch, if you will, but he does look plenty fit for his debut. All right, Joe Mishak. You too put together a trifecta. Walk us through it.
I did. I went a little deep here. I certainly agree that we're going to be involved early, just based on his workouts. He's keen. He wants to go. So no confidence that is lost that he'll be in the shuffle early. But in case the pace gets a little hot, I did as you alluded to, include the number 2 Circumvent up front, a horse by Flintshire who should appreciate longer ground moving forward. But Dave Hoffman's definitely can sneak first time out. You get Abel Cedillo, very patient rider, knows the pace setup. Throw him in there. Also agree that there's a lack of experience in this field. So the hugely benefit to the 8 Eagle Chief, who's running some nice numbers for John Sadler. And you alluded to the 7 Beyond Brilliant for John Sheriffs, who's actually first time out is not the greatest, but you look at his turf stats and they're very, very impressive. The horse has been working really well. So just trying to create some extra value on this ticket a little bit.
No, I like it. And I like the fact that you included the 2 in that first slot, because the difficulty of winning with a first-time starter, I can't even really put it into a percentage, but it's not easy. So while the expectation is high and the anticipation of Naismith and his career evolving, we're going in with saying, hey, look, let's have a good experience. Hey, if we win, great. If not, let's hope we run well, come out of it sound, so we can live to fight another battle. So it's interesting when you look at the statistic with Flavian Pratt, Richard Mandela, over the past 365 days, 18 wins from 58 starters, a 31% win rate. So it's nice to see that he has a leading rider aboard.
Not too long ago, Nick, right? That he had a horse named Omaha Beach, right? Took 4 or 5 starts to break that maiden, and went on to be. So I mean, everyone wants to win first time out. We're an instant gratification business, or we like to be, right? But sometimes you got to look at the patience and seeing what the horse is getting out of it, and if they're moving up and progressing. So let's see what we got this weekend.
All right. Well, thank you, Joe Mishak. Thank you, Joe Moran. And hopefully you've taken some notes at home. And once again, appreciating you all out there in My Racehorse land, whether you're a shareholder, a fan, or just a friend. Feel free to stop by. It's an interactive show on the Fridays. And a reminder that the Wednesday work show, which kicked off a few weeks back with Joe Moran and myself analyzing the workouts for the My Racehorse Equine athletes, is also a live show. So feel free to add your thoughts and sentiments as we go forward. All right. So Daddy's Joy today, Friday, and of course Sunday, you've got the likes of Storm Shooter and Naismith on debut. Certain to be an exciting one, win, lose, or draw, but we're looking forward to winning. All right. If you're a regular watcher of My Racehorse Live, you would have seen that we've had some suggestions referencing and explaining terminology of racing terminology and also handicapping. I want to welcome back in our All Things Social Hannah back in the show. She can start by providing us some details on horses' coats.
Yeah, so a few weeks back we had Kathy Beck, my racehorse owner, on, and she gave the suggestion to talk about terminology, and I thought, why haven't we done that before? So we're starting this week with something simple, coat colors. I'm going to give you guys examples for each one because I think that's the easiest way to understand it. So to start, chestnut, that's kind of your picturesque thoroughbred in my mind, you know, the red-colored kind of horse, and when you want to think of that kind of horse, you think Secretariat, Justify. Those are the horses that kind of come to mind when you think chestnut. And then moving on to bay, yellowish tan, brown or dark. It's like a rich shade. What colors you want to, or what horses you want to think of? American Pharoah or our own Authentic. That's kind of your classic bay. And then dark brown or dark bay or brown. I kind of think of Seattle Slew. Sometimes difficult to separate from black or dark bay. And then gray/roan, you think of, you know, specifically gray, and I think of Arrowgate in that sense. And then black and white are very specific, you know, for it to be considered black or white, their whole body needs to be covered in the black or the white. So not as common in that sense.
No, I think it's great. And it just, when I see this terminology of coat colors, first and foremost, it's kind of bringing back, I'm not trying to age and date myself, but you know, the gray or roan for me would have been likely a spectacular bid, so to speak. And then when I think chestnut, I'm thinking 70s. I'm thinking, of course, Secretariat and Affirmed. But yeah, that's great. I love it. All right, coat colors. Okay, yeah. Let's definitely keep that up. I'm a big fan of the terminology because there are so many track terminologies, if you will. All right, as we bring back in both Joe Mishak and Joe Moran each week, we're all in the process of learning and being informed. And I know, Hannah, you've kind of spotlighted the fact that, you know, certain horses and individuals. Tell us your spotlight horse and what the process is. And then Joe Mishak, you can kind of explain what we're seeing on the screen.
Yeah, so we're going to head to New York for this one, Mo Mischief. We're going to show on the screen in a little bit him at Kesmark, but I was able to talk to New York-based racing manager Karen Johnson. She was able to provide some information. He's still at Kesmark, I believe, and Joe Mishak will kind of update us on all that. And because of COVID, she hasn't been able to actually see him at the track, I believe, since August. But she did tell me that he loves to nap. She said almost every time she went, he would see him relaxed, which we love to hear that because that shows that he's really comfortable in the environment and the barn he's in, and also just an easygoing horse to look at and loves his job. So you're going to see a little bit of his personality here, but for the most part, we hear he's really comfortable and relaxed, and love to hear that.
All right. So in this process, and just to clarify, Joe Mishak, Kesmark is in Kentucky, correct?
Correct. Correct.
Sorry.
All right. And Mo Mischief will, once he gets back and gets his, I hate to use the term sea legs, he gets his sea legs, he'll return back into training with Todd Pletcher. And I know oftentimes he'll send him to Florida and then ship up to New York. So tell us about the treadmill and the rehab idea that goes into aqua treading.
Yeah, so a couple of weeks ago, we talked about horses, you know, coming back from injury and the timelines. We said, you know, a horse is going to need 90 days off. And then sometimes shareholders ask, well, it's been 90 days. Why aren't they in a race yet? Well, it's because when we described, well, if you take 90 days off from injury, you're not going to go right into a marathon. You need to, you know, get yourself built back up. The same situation here when a horse is, they've had their time off, they've had their rest time off. We're starting to get them built back up into the cardio, you know, get the cardio going, get the aerobics going, get them, you know, fit again. And this is just a method. I think you use more for horses that have, you know, a lot of soft tissue injuries like suspensories, things like that. I know Nick, as a former trainer, you could probably comment a little bit more on that. But just a method we can use in those first 30 to 60 days to get the horse going back into shape, as opposed to sending them directly back on the track and taking, the beating of being on a track right off that layoff. That's the primary purpose here.
All right, Joe Moran, would you care to touch on that? I know that there are different methods. Obviously, you have the aqua tread, you have a treadmill, which wouldn't be in water, and essentially you also have horses that would swim in that rehabilitation process. But Joe Mishak, as you had touched on, soft tissue versus bone-related type injury. Joe Moran, would you like to add to that?
Well, I guess I would say my biggest, why I like the underwater treadmill so much is that they're able to go through that with no weight on their back, and it allows them to really work through that water. Now, I'm a big proponent of the swimming pool as well. You don't quite see that as at too many facilities. It's out there, but you don't see that as much, at least in California. And I haven't had too much experience with personal horses going through that. We haven't had many experiences with MyRacehorse horses going through that. But I would say for me, I'm a big fan of the underwater treadmill. It seems to give those horses a huge, not only fitness, getting a good basis of fitness under them, but also their coat. Thanks, Andy. I appreciate that comment. I couldn't resist by seeing Nick laughing. I said, what is he laughing about? But no, seriously, you see horses, and Bonnie Akers, Bob Mitchell of Bonnie Akers in California, he was one of the first ones to bring the underwater treadmill, the aqua tread, to California. And he had horses rolling through there because of it. And horses thrive. They got to go in that water. They got that exercise, and they became happy. Definitely being in that farm atmosphere, it's a great way to get them started before heading back into the track.
All right. Well, I know that we've got numerous questions coming in, and let's hopefully we continue that winning road to recover and getting back to the races in Mo Mischief. And, knowing that pedigree, the Into Mischiefs, as we saw with Authentic, I mean, they're like fine wine. They're going to get better and better, and you just have to trust the process. And, having Dr. Berk on earlier, who's been in contact with Joe Mishak, and collectively putting the horse first. And just remember, folks, time is on our side. 365 days a year, that's the horse racing season, and he'll get back, hopefully, to the winner's circle before you know it. All right, question came in, Joe Mishak, on Psychedelic Shack. Up in New York, I know that they've been hit with inclement weather, as has most of the country. What's the current status with Psychedelic Shack?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you and I have been working very closely on this one with the folks up at Fort Christopher, doing extremely well. He's about ready to get on the after the layoff process into the next phase. We're looking into another facility a few hours away to get that process going. It has some indoor training, indoor track. So he'll be, getting that foundation built back on him again before sending back down to the track.
Joe Moran, you've been close up and personal with one of our favorite horses, obviously from a personality standpoint, although I was careful not to turn my back at OBS a few years back. Joe Mishak with us. Vertical Threat, what's the latest? I know that you've been in contact with trainer Richard Baltus. Is he close to a return?
Yeah, so I talked to Richard Baltus, I want to say on Monday. Positive reports. He's doing very well. We're still finalizing a plan of his return, but we would expect it to be within probably the next 3 weeks. So it was a conversation with a horse like him. Do we get him started on the underwater treadmill, or do we just bring him into the track, let him get back to Ruben Losa, who's known him the best, dealt with him hands-on the best? He is a little bit of a higher strung, ready-to-go horse. So the plan will likely be to get him right into San Luis Rey, get him back with Ruben and the team that's dealt with him. So we'll hopefully have some good news here in the coming weeks.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate those updates. And as we proceed into next week, of course, we'll be continuing to give you those updates as well as on Collusion Illusion. Wanted to get back to you, Hannah. We've got a fun-filled show. It's been action-packed today. Let's go into the terminology. Back to the terminology.
I don't have any more terminology, but I saw an overwhelming amount of positive feedback to my terminology segment today. So with that being said, if you have any feedback of what you'd like to see next week or the coming weeks, please let me know. Comment on our posts or DM us. I would love to know what everyone's interested in learning about, because I'm learning too. So I'll look forward to that. And then also check out Wednesday Works every Wednesday too.
And also enlighten us on your one-on-one. I know that you had Johnny V on this week. When do you actually air that particular show? Is it a live show?
It is not live. I pre-recorded those. Those will hopefully be coming out every single week. I have one coming out next week. I won't say with who, but it is another jockey, and those will probably release every Thursday. So another one, if you have any suggestions of who you'd like to see, let me know.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it truly has been a pleasure, and it seems as if we've covered so much in, about 50 minutes, and we certainly likely could have gone forever, it seems. But I'd like to thank our special guest today and our resident veterinarian here at My Racehorse Live. Proud to call him a friend, Dr. Jeffrey Berk. It goes without saying, your knowledge is countless. It's infinite. And to Joe Moran, Joe Mishak, thank you for that handicapping insight. Look forward to the runners, Daddy's Joy today, Storm Shooter and Naismith debuting on Sunday. Storm Shooter looking to get a send through that first level allowance of the New York State variety. So on behalf of all of us here at My Racehorse Live, we appreciate you, the fan, the shareholder, and of course, all of my friends out there. Enjoy your weekend, enjoy the racetrack, and enjoy winning potentially here at My Racehorse. And until next time, we will see you in the winner's circle. Have a good day, everybody.